Hi everyone, I'm Kaius with a K, and apparently YouTube no longer suppresses your videos if you say fuck in the first 7 seconds, but that's besides the point. Anyway, do you guys remember the video I made talking about fighting game wikis? Whew, talk about nostalgia. Hey, that sentence I just said 4 seconds ago? Good times. When I made that fighting game wiki video, the original intention was always to cover non-wiki sources of information for these games as well, but I ended up cutting it out of the video for the sake of keeping the rhythm and cadence of the script in a certain way. But yeah, there's actually other ways fighting games have had their information stored throughout the decades, even before the days of the internet. It's because back in the 90s we used this little thing that grew on trees called paper. Okay, I'm being told it's actually pronounced paper. Magazines would do specials talking about the characters and moves, book publishers would license out strategy guides for hot games, and of course, developers would pack in their own books with the games themselves. Instruction booklets. I remember seeing a post on Blue Sky saying that video games didn't have tutorials in the past, and though that's kind of true, it's because the game's onboarding was more or less documented in a booklet that you were usually urged to read before you even started operating the game. Though these stopped being put into games as often because game developers made the startling discovery that most gamers are completely incapable of reading. And yes, I know, lol, I unironically use Blue Sky or whatever, get over it! Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. I love print media. I know it's a really overdone anecdote, but there really is nothing quite like the feeling of a book in your hands. I've collected a lot of magazines and comics over the years, and that's to say nothing about novels. I really like books. One of my favourite fighting games is one that is literally a crossover between a bunch of characters from novel series, and one of those novel series is one I own a gigantic 1600 page omnibus for. All that aside, I thought that today, with everybody going back to school, we could take a fun library study day to read through the old school, and sometimes new school, expansive fighting game books. And where better to start than with the original fighting game book? The instruction manual. But first, feast your eyes on this. Have you ever looked at my character and thought, wow, I want that furry twink on a pillow? No? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, but if you were to hypothetically say yes, do I have the item for you? That's right, I partner with Cuddly Octopus to bring you the first and probably last ever K Stacky Macaron merch drop. It's funded by you guys at last year's Twitch subathon. Drawn by that one guy who draws buff furries on the internet and prints in beautifully comfortable and easy to wash two-way tricot material to cuddle forever and ever. Look at that smug ass smile. You can take them home with you. You can put them on your bed, on your couch, pin it up on your wall, show it off in public and enjoy all the weird looks people give you. Fill it with chili con carne and swing it around like a lasso to hear the sloshing sound it makes. Okay, don't do that last part. You can get one of these yourself today at cuddlyoctopus.com/Kaius. This isn't a bet and you can see for yourself at cuddlyoctopus.com/Kaius. Please note that the pillow and pillow cover are sold separately and shipping price may vary depending on your location. That's cuddlyoctopus.com/Kaius. Okay, where were we? Street Fighter 2 Turbo's SNES manual is chock full of everything a would-be hyper fighter would need, from getting started, to controlling your fighter cunt, which is an oddly specific thing to give the player control over, but those console exclusive mechanics are always interesting. Also, the word choices in this manual in general are really strange. It's not like the information given is wrong or anything, it's just presented in such a strange way. Holds allow you to grab an opponent and then hit or bite them again and again. For example, it is possible for Blanca to bite Guile on the head. To do the head bite, Blanca must push forward against Guile and then you must push the hard punch fierce button on your control pad. Like, it's so insistent that Blanca can do this against Guile specifically. It's not like Guile is the only character you can perform a hold on. Though given how insanely busted that character is, I suppose it might be surprising that you can do anything to that dude at all. Each character has developed his or her own special moves for use in combat. This manual does this like several times. This his or her shit. Man, just use they. Even back then that was much better for readability. That's completely besides the point though. I like how these movesets have so much flavor text, and the new moves characters have are incorporated diegetically into the flavor text, usually describing it as a new technique that character has developed for whatever reason. I imagine if you were a younger Street Fighter player watching these characters learn the techniques in real time with these frequent updates must have really deepened your connection with the world and its cast. The manual's description of the control configuration even mentions the Capcom Fighter Power Stick, or rather the Capcom Power Stick Fighter if you're not American. The CPS Fighter was an official fight stick released by Capcom for use on the Sega Mega Drive and Super Nintendo, and Capcom even made adapters for it to be usable on PC-based systems like the FM Towns. You know, sometimes I wonder if I should make a video going over a bunch of arcade sticks and other fighting game related peripherals, but then I remember the suffering that comes with desire and how luxury objects like controllers are actually very expensive, and unfortunately one cannot simply manifest things to appear in front of them just by thinking it would be a fun video to make. Oh well. Nowadays people joke about the names of fighting game lingo like SPG or Boko Boko or Baroque or
Toki.
But usually nowadays the developers can just have someone else explain these mechanics through magazine articles or people labbing the game at live events. But back then with these instruction manuals, the burden of explaining these things was on the developers. Check out this Art of Fighting manual's explanation of the Raz button. To reduce the spirit of your opponent, push the Raz A button. Pushing this button allows your character to tease the opponent and reduce his energy. Razzing your opponent. Press the A button and your character will go into the Raz pose, which will reduce your opponent's spirit level by a set amount. However, you're vulnerable to attack when in this pose, so only use it when there is a sufficient distance between you and your opponent. Use it in versus mode to tease and razz your friend. Can I be honest? This shit pisses me off. They're so confidently calling this the Raz mechanic and saying you can razz your friends, whatever the fuck that means. All the while not once in this manual is the word Raz spelled correctly. You spell it with two Z's, SNK. Two. You can't just remove Z's from whatever fucking word you want and think that's okay. That letter already doesn't get enough work. It's the fucking least used letter in the English alphabet. What the fuck does Raz even mean anyway? Isn't it the pink twink from Sonic Lost World? That's not a game mechanic, it's a Fortnite skin. Whatever man, who signed off on this shit? Nintendo? This official seal is your assurance that Nintendo has approved the quality of this product. Always look for this seal when buying games and accessories to ensure complete compatibility with your Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Phew, well, that's a relief. Guess this game must be pretty good then. I was one of those little freaks who would always overread and overanalyze the instruction manuals of games that I liked. Not only were they a great way to learn how to play the game, but because video game storytelling wasn't as robust or as viable as it is now, a lot of the core information on the setting and characters were left in here instead for people to read about. Check out this absolute Tolkien lore mammoth in the aforementioned Rise of the Robots instruction booklet. This 3-page spread isn't the only lore dump in this instruction booklet either, as every single character in this manual has a full page dedicated just to explaining each droid's manufactured purpose and inner workings, which actually takes up most of the manual because each character only has like 1 or 2 special moves each. They should write a novel out of this or some shit. Oh, wait, they did. What the hell? Sure, I'll read it. Not here though. How does a full chapter 1 read through on the Patreon sound? Not the whole thing though, I feel like I'm treading dangerous waters just by reading a single chapter of this shit. Anyway, something else I found humorous about the instruction booklet was how while the SNES version's manual had diegetic gameplay and cutscene pics for each character, the manual for the Mega Drive version just uses pics from the main menu. Like, these guys couldn't even be bothered to play for the game for the screenshots, which I don't blame them. Rise of the Robots is not very good. Of course, the sequel's manual is also filled with a shit ton of lore, but there's a little less attention given to the lore of each individual character, with some characters getting 3 sentences, and some getting entirely too many sentences. Like, don't worry, I know that Necroborg can discharge lightning. It literally has a special move called Lightning! This manual also mentions the executions, which I still don't believe people have managed to record themselves doing every one of. I've seen like 1 or 2 executions pulled off in Rise 2 maybe, like ever. On the flip side, there are some manuals for these console generations that don't have much of any flavour to them at all. If I were to pick a polar opposite to Rise of the Robots' window dressing, I'd probably pick Fighter Maker, as that instruction booklet is basically a high school textbook. They don't even name any of the characters. Okay, Skullmania doesn't count. To be honest, calling Fighter Maker a game isn't really doing it any favours. It's definitely more like a software package, and the manual kinda solidifies that, having only 10 pages dedicated to the modes and gameplay, and an almighty 50 plus pages solely dedicated to the title's edit mode feature. It's not so much an instruction booklet as it is an operation manual, which I guess makes sense. For throwing sequences, you can also set your opponent's movements. Using this capability, gain experience by creating irrelevant movements like scratching your backside. What? Honestly, I'd love to dedicate a whole video just to the Fighter Maker 3D releases one day, but that seems more akin to something Guile, Winkle, or Carnage will do, so I'm half expecting them to get to it before I do. Besides, I tend to go into broader subjects that cover a lot of individual games rather than focus on 1 or 2 titles per video. Instruction manuals kinda tapered off a little more with each console generation, and the last time they were really on this level was during the 6th console generation. I mean, look at this Tekken Tag Tournament manual. Not only is it printed in full colour, but each character in the starting roster has a full page dedicated to them. There's even some unique info here, like how Nina Williams' blood type was originally A, but it changed while in cryosleep. Excuse me? Anna doesn't even have this on hers despite also having been in cryosleep, and I'm pretty sure this change isn't mentioned literally anywhere else, ever. Speaking of Tekken, how about we pivot over to the second subtopic of this video? Strategy guides were a similar sort of thing to instruction manuals, only they were a lot more loose, a lot more indie, and sometimes some games really felt like they were designed just to sell these things. Because how the fuck else am I supposed to know about the Palace Midas secret in Tomb Raider, or about those goddamn warp tiles in Chapter 24X of Fire Emblem Thracia 776? I'm getting ahead of myself though, let's talk about EGM's Tekken 1 strategy guide. You know we're off to a good start when they use these completely unbearable font color combos, call throws cheap, and can't even spell Heihachi's name right. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt and go ahead and learn fat strategies for all our favourite fighters. Of all the fighters in Tekken, Michelle is the most bland, with her mediocre range, speed, power, and combo ability. She ranks at the bottom of my list. I know there are some who can play as her and enjoy it, but I don't. Well, Michelle is actually fine in this game, so I don't really get these low ratings. Especially when on the next page, Jack is generally considered better than her in every metric except for speed, despite the fact that he has no real good combos in Tekken 1 and is generally considered the worst character in the game, but I digress. This official Tekken 2 guide is a little more palatable to me, having a much better explanation of the cast and general tactics and actually going over the whole roster, not just the starting cast. I pretty strongly appreciate them also going out of their way to rank each character, so this acts as a window into how people in the 90s viewed the tier list of Tekken 2. I also have to respect the set of balls it must have taken for this officially endorsed strategy guide to explicitly mention Jun Kazama's infinite combo, and then not tell you how to perform it before going on to say that Jun is a lower mid-tier character who barely scripts out of the bottom 5. Good stuff. But then they also go on to compare Roger Alex to King from Tekken 1 in order to say that Roger Alex are bad, as if King in Tekken 1 isn't a broken, overtuned mess who probably has more glitches in the game than he does spots on that Jaguar print, so maybe it's not all that great of a comparison. Also, check out this Tekken 3 strategy guide from Prima. Prima was a publishing company that focused primarily on really in-depth strategy guides for video games until about 2019, before which they had even sold their guides on Steam, though these guides are gone from Steam completely and were, unsurprisingly, not purchased by many people as Steam isn't exactly known for its particularly diverse book library. These are archived in PDF form on the Internet Archive, thankfully. Anyway, the Tekken 3 guide is very in-depth, though is clearly designed more so for players who want to experience the single-player content first, providing excellent matchup advice like, if you can't win this match with Eddie, you should choose another character. The bonus hidden characters, Boskonovich, Gon, and Anna, who is technically console exclusive because she was a costume for Nina in the arcade version, don't have these matchup tips, and they've got a 2-page spread instead of a 6-page spread. Like others, Dr. B has a second outfit. Great, well that puts that completely irrational fear to rest. I also love how Gon's occupation is just comic book character. And of course, because I'll never get to mention this again otherwise, Anna's fucking hilarious Tekken free bio. Hobby: planting false memories in Nina. Dislikes: Nina, because she is no longer interested in her. Likes: Jerry from Tom and Jerry. This is actually a recurring theme with the Williams twins, since Nina's Tekken 1 and 2's NTSC manuals also state that she likes Tom from Tom and Jerry, thereby proving herself as the inferior twin. Though you might be wondering, if Anna likes Jerry so much, why is her weapon named Lovely Tom? Well, Harada actually mentioned this earlier this year. Anna always likes Tom more, but her profiles were altered by Nina to say that she likes Jerry instead, which is the kind of hater shit we can all come to respect. Sorry Nina, I wasn't familiar with your game. You're the superior twin again. And yes, Harada did retcon 30 years worth of Anna profiles. And you know what? I don't care. As some of you may know, it's actually okay to retcon pieces of world building and lore if the retcon is funny enough. Also, I don't really think retconning a fighting game character's favourite Tom and Jerry character has particularly large ramifications for the overall story, even if I think modern Tekken stories are kinda slop regardless. In terms of other Prima guides, I have this Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu one on hand for some reason. I don't even own that game. Nor will I. It's bad, like, really bad. But this guide has always been so interesting to me because they have really inconsistent metrics for the characters, like not including heights for characters like Gohan and Nappa, then going on to say that Goku is 5'7", Vegeta is 5'6", and Trunks is 5'5", which just isn't true by the way. But then it goes on to say that Frieza is 6'2". What? Oh, and also this guide has that famous Funimation trademarking and registering and shit. Dapper's profile literally changes which trademark symbol it's using halfway through. Thank fucking god we're out of this era of Dragon Ball. This is the Mortal Kombat Trilogy Fighter's Companion. There's a few MK guides I want to talk about, but I wanted to go over this one first since it piqued my interest. An MK trilogy with rollback netcode is on the horizon, so I figured I may as well give myself time to brush up on the Noob Saibot Aggressor Simulator. Imagine my surprise when I see they have a page dedicated to Super Sub-Zero. I was kind of under the impression that Super Sub-Zero was a fan name that the player base themselves came up with, but I guess it was also adopted by officially endorsed content. To those of you who don't know competitive Mortal Kombat lore, basically the Nintendo 64 version of Trilogy opted not to include the unmasked Sub-Zero to save on sprite storage, so they just funneled all of his moves into the classic version instead. There's probably a ketchup and mustard video that explains it better than I can. Like the Prima guides, this guidebook also has some info on fighting as and against each character, as well as a list of anti-airs for each character and a paragraph going over their weaknesses. Noob Saibot's main weakness is his lack of moves. Ah yes, because if there's anything I would have wanted for Trilogy Noob, it was for him to have even more moves. Fighting is Shiva. Shiva is a very strong character. Okay, I'll meet this one at its level. It explains that Shiva's strengths are that she can dish out a lot of damage, and I guess in small doses, that could be true. But her combo damage doesn't get particularly high compared to the other characters who can deal upwards of 70% in one combo. Though I guess in the N64 version she has that one crouching hard kick infinite, but so does like everyone in that game. If we go back a few years, we'll find the Game Pro Mortal Kombat guide. This guide is thorough and applies to every single version of the game, even going as far as having the same pages pretty much reprinted several times for the different systems the game was released on, which is nothing if not admirable. Also, the scans I read while researching this video were fucking graffitied for some reason. Look at all these smiley faces. Look at Sub-Zero's amazing catchphrase. Yes. I did get access to more standard scans, and I plan to recompile these into a separate Internet Archive upload at some point. But for now I want you guys to really look at these doodles, and just bask. Okay, that's enough. And now it's time for the most important part of the video. The thing I've been wanting to talk about for like 4 fucking videos now and haven't had the chance to. The pièce de résistance of fighting game books. The Capcom vs SNK 2 Bible. Obviously it's not the only Bible guide out there. I mean, there's the Guilty Gear Complete Bible for instance, but the CVS2 Bible is on a whole other level, and believe it or not has been a go-to source for me for some videos in the past, as well as just reading up on CVS2 in general. What's so good about it, you ask? Well, to make a long story short, it's pretty much exactly like owning the Super Combo Wiki in paperback. Which is actually exactly true because the Super Combo Wiki for CVS2 was written with the CVS2 Bible as a guide. The Super Combo Wiki's scans are actually the ones you're seeing on screen right now. There's information about the move's damage, their guard type, frame advantage, cancel options, even a visualized timeline of the character's frame data beneath each move. To say that the Capcom vs SNK 2 Bible is thorough would be an insane undersell, because this isn't even the extent of what this book has to offer. There's a bunch of pages on hitboxes interspersed throughout the book, for example. Here's a page explaining jump-ins and cross-ups. And it even got all the special intros similarly put in random pages throughout the book. I'm kind of feeling awkward about having hyped it up now, because now that I've explained everything here, there isn't actually a lot else to say. The CVS2 Bible kind of speaks for itself, and rather than talk about every minute detail in the book, I wanted you guys to go read it for yourself. So I'll leave a link to the Super Combo Wiki's FAQ in the description so you can go peep the scans there. I guess that's it for strategy guides. But what is there left to see in this vast library? Ordinarily you'd think that all of the bases would be covered by the instruction manuals and strategy guides of the days of old, but there's obviously another one I mentioned at the start of the video. Something much more loose and contemporary than the guidelets and booklets. And where better to start than with Electronic Gaming Monthly? Or that is to say, EGM's 1997 Ultimate Guide to Fighting Games. I'll give EGM's editors props, because they actually source all of the online FAQs they reference when putting this together. And I did go and peruse some of the game FAQs they credit here, and have to immediately walk what I just said back, because the very first FAQ I check has a disclaimer clearly stating that the author prohibits the use of any part of this FAQ to be used in game magazines, hint books, or other commercial purposes. In their defense, I guess it's fine if they didn't necessarily take anything word for word. They're just crediting the FAQ for being punctual with the information at all, and it's not exactly illegal to be inspired. Still, I found it a little funny that my research experience went down like this. Each segment in this book has its own visual style, and just look at the Street Fighter 3 section, it oozes that late 90s style. They've even got this combo class blackboard of really cool combos, like this combo that incorporates jumping fup into ducking fuck and caps it off with a fireball with fup. Okay, seriously though. I'm so used to the modern Street Fighter style of notation that it didn't immediately register to me that they were using the old notation style of jab strong fierce and short forward roundhouse. Nowadays Street Fighter notation is kinda homogenized with other games, using light, medium and heavy for both kicks and punches. It's fun that even little nuggets like this can display moments in fighting game history though. Well, I say this, but the Tekken 3 section is a complex case, because not only does it feature the more consistently seen 1, 2, 3, 4 format when describing certain moves, but it lists the moveset in this headache-inducing format that refers to each button as left kick, right punch, etc. The most mind-boggling part about this is there isn't really any clearly given indication on how both of these formats interconnect, so if you know one but not the other, you're shit out of luck. Even a lot of moves that are listed under both of these things aren't always consistent. Oh well, at least their lore tidbits are consistent with canon. It is 30 years later. Heihachi's gotta be pushing 90, and he's really angry. Well, they can't all be winners. Check out the glistening medieval typeface on the Mesa Dark Age pages. Check out the white font on bright yellow background making the title text borderline unfucking readable. Fatalities. Possibly the first 3D polygonal game to have real life fatalities. Well, you heard it here first folks. Mace the Dark Age is the first video game to literally kill people in real life. And it's not like quick and dirty or anything, they die badly. So next time you hit someone with a fatality in Mace, just think, is it worth it? Wait, Lord Demos has a move called Mega Thrust? Okay, maybe it's worth it. The very next page has some details that intrigued me greatly. There's a 3-page article for Vampire Savior, but since the game hadn't actually released yet, it's written under the at the time proposed English arcade release's title of Darkstalkers Jedda's Damnation. Of course, this game was never titled that. When Capcom released it worldwide, they just used the original Vampire Savior title. Also, on BB Hood's section, there's a misused apostrophe on the word Darkstalkers, which doesn't really add anything to the page, but pisses me off enough that I need to make everybody else see it. Most confusing to me is that the Street Fighter EX section of the magazine uses the modern style of Street Fighter button notation, which makes me wonder how much of this was actually proofread to be consistent. I guess it's because they referenced Dark Lancer's EX Plus game facts for this, right down to writing Pullum Purna's moves in the romanizations of their Japanese names, like Arakurisato, rather than the much more sensical Alakurist. That's enough of that full magazine special. Let's take a step back and go check out the older issues of EGM. The inaugural July 1994 issue of EGM2 is packed with fighting game details, including a 6-page spread on Bloodstorm. To be honest, I'm kind of obsessed with the fact that they have a screenshot of the Sushi X taunt, but they literally don't say anything about it. Like, Strata Games tried to get on EGM's good side and they just gave it the bare minimum acknowledgement. The EGM editors are winning that EDGAF war. Check out this lore section too. The Mega War fought centuries ago. Oh, okay, never mind, I'm already bored. There isn't much I could say about Bloodstorm that hasn't already been said by other creators. It's kind of ass, and it's really amusing to see this article just give this game so much attention over features that in retrospect were actually pretty fundamentally faulty. As if this couldn't get any sillier, the very next page following the 6-page Bloodstorm article is that infamous Bloodstorm advertisement with Daniel Pacina. Though this one also has a Bloodstorm sweepstake on the side. Be the coolest on your block and own the hottest fighting game ever. Sheesh, and I thought false advertising was outlawed in the 1940s. Oh, and there's also a brutal Pause of Fury ad right next to it. You know, the old 1-2 punch. There's a World Heroes article next, but look at this Tempest 2000 ad in between it. With pronouns. World Heroes 2 Jet! This World Heroes is maybe the most mixed of the bunch, so I wonder what they'll have to say about it. The graphics and the animations in Jet are top notch. Check out the awesome cinema sequence. Well, I'd like to EGM2, but unfortunately, that's a still picture. The next 2 pages are just movesets and they have a lot less flavour than the Bloodstorm pages, even if I do think they look cooler. Okay, now for the real main event of this magazine. The Mortal Kombat 2 vs Super Street Fighter 2 special feature. Let me flick through this real quick. Wow, an ad on the 2nd page. Okay, whatever, let's just keep... Another one? Holy fuck, this is excessive. Stop it! Even on the 1-2 page spread in this entire feature, there's a continuation of the stupid fucking Equinox ad from the previous page. Anyway, like I implied earlier, this article mostly just compares Mortal Kombat 2 to Super Street Fighter 2. It doesn't actually tell you which of the two is better than the other. It's MK2 though, and I'm not just saying that because I like the MK games more or something, because I literally don't. Super Street Fighter 2 is just not great. It must suck to be sandwiched between the two most critically acclaimed versions of Street Fighter 2, honestly. I don't envy this slow broken piece of shit one bit. Packed full of moves and major megage, this is sure to be their best version yet. The MK2 segment does have some pretty neat comparisons of the different versions of the game. And it's kind of heartwarming to see them get really excited about how well preserved the feeling behind each sprite is in these ports, which was admittedly pretty rare to see back in the 90s since console gaming wasn't even close to the arcade experience yet, unless you were the Neo Geo I guess, but that's cheating. They've even got a behind the scenes of these absolutely sick MK2 commercials, as well as some early news on the then upcoming theatrical film. They did also drop an in-progress cast list of the Street Fighter movie earlier in the magazine, but I didn't really think it was worth lingering on, especially since it's not like 2 of the lead actors were like sucking and fucking on set or anything. I could probably make an entire second video on the EGM articles and specials alone, so I'm not really going to linger on this stuff much longer, especially since there's another subject I desperately want to talk about this video. With the rise of online news and marketing, gaming magazines have largely fallen out of favour, especially ones targeted towards the older crowd. Like, yeah, I can go out now and pick up like a Fortnite magazine or a Sonic the Hedgehog magazine, but that's not what I'm here for. Those magazines were written with like 7-year-olds in mind. I don't want to build a plane with tails. I want to build a plane with Eeyore Yagami like a goddamn grown-up. That's why I'm lucky that Okizine Gaiden exists. It's a design series created by Michael Levesque, also known as Mr. MKL, focused specifically on the kind of fighting game minutiae that tickles my brain. They have 2 issues out as of writing, one on 2D Fighter Maker and one on fatalities. Of course, the name Okizine is derived from the fighting game term okizeme, as well as magazine, as explained in the first issue. It's a pivotal moment in a match and is a wide possibility space. I also have a fondness for gaming magazines and print media from the 90s. I was always excited to receive a new issue of Nintendo Power in the mail, or find a new volume of EGM on the newsstand. This design is meant to reflect the possibility space of Okizeme, embrace the excitement and nostalgia of delving into a gaming magazine, and be a place to explore the interesting ideas, history, and future of fighting games. I've loved reading just the first volume over and over. It's so eclectic and stylish, and on top of that, the articles are fucking beautiful. The writing perfectly captures a mix of old magazine style reporting and a more down-to-earth haptic description of how the games play. Check out the inaugural issue, which as mentioned covers 2D Fighter Maker games. Take a quick look at this page for Dynamite Bomb. I haven't played this game at the time of writing this video, but the way this article is worded, I can already sort of get a feel for the game itself. And it makes me want to go play it because I'm being sold this game by an author who truly cares about the genre, and the passion just oozes from these magazines. I'm obviously not going to show more than a small handful of pages because Okizine is a product that is being sold for money and is well worth your time and money. And I'll link to the way to pick up the books for yourself in the description because these really do deserve your time if you love fighting games. If you aren't able to get it in print form, you can also pick up the PDF version, which is the version I'm showing off in this video, for its simplicity's sake of course. Seriously though, you should go out and buy yourself these books. If you're a fighting game fan, you're literally doing yourself a massive disservice by not picking these works of art up. Even if you don't get the print version, you should at least get the PDF version, especially if you like my style of video, because it's almost like the magazine equivalent to how I format my videos, with less profanity and a little more artistry. I mean, it's literally like $5 Canadian right now for the digital edition, and it's DRM free. You should really go do it! Now! Mr. MKL also offered to answer any questions I have about Okizine, and to be honest, I didn't really get back to him about any questions regarding the book itself, but this is largely because I felt that the creations he was making spoke for themselves, and that they really told me everything I needed to know. And that's that fighting games rule. And talking about fighting games fucking rules. Of course, there was one question that didn't have an answer in the books themselves of why you would do something like this in 2025 in the first place. Print media is not exactly a thriving medium, especially for niche subjects. According to Mr. MKL on his Blue Sky, he does this because he feels that it's a radical act to create something that people can have, keep, and use as they see fit. And he's right. I mean, if you buy my Dakimakura, that's yours, there's no DRM attached to that shit. But no, yeah, Mr. MKL is completely right in saying that. Like I said at the start of the video, there's nothing quite like the feeling of a book in your hands. Of the paper being entirely in your hands to flip and flop and crumple and dog-ear to your heart's content. And that's kinda why this topic resonated with me a lot. I can't help but stress the haptic feeling of a fighting game whenever I make my videos and talk about the genre, and I guess the same applies to reading about them too. The convenience of wikis, desktops, and phones is nice, but when you're reading it on paper there's a certain human feeling to it that can't really be replicated through a monitor. This is getting rambly, so instead of closing out the video in my usual way, I thought it would be more fitting to paraphrase the final page of Okizine Volume 1. I truly believe it's important to support the art you want to see in the world. It's doubly important at the local level. As a small creator myself, I know how important and materially helpful community support is. Messages of thanks, insightful discussions, and of course subscriptions are all immensely important types of support, and each one plays a vital role in making independent art sustainable. So do what you can within your means. Follow an artist, subscribe to a streamer, find a game on itch.io or Steam, buy it and tell your friends about it. The fighting game community has managed to sustain itself almost entirely due to the endless determination of the community. We're the reason we have events to attend and discords to frequent. We're the reason we have tools like FightKid and Ikemen Go. And we're the ones who can use our resources to support the independent artists making the games and art we love. Let's flourish together. Thank you to Kai, Deyin, Jericho, Mick, XCap, Penrose, and Phenomenal for their support this month on Patreon. This month's reward is the read-through of the first chapter of the Rise of the Robots novel. Firstly, holy yap, this video has so many fucking words in it. Secondly, holy shit, I'm so sorry this video almost took twice as long as I intended it to. For those of you who are out of the know, my anxiety was getting real bad, and I was talking to my doctor and I got new antidepressants, which slowed down my workflow considerably for the first few weeks. I didn't really want to force productivity because I was worried that it would make the video worse and burp me out while I'm adjusting to new medication, and when I did get productive I feel like I just ended up writing more words than I was aiming for, and the scope of the video kept getting larger and larger and larger. But I'm here now and the video is here now and we're all la happy, yay. I'm going to try to adjust to the new meds for a little longer, so next month's video might be late too. I'm sorry that I keep making a habit out of this, but adult life is already so goddamn weird and I'm just working within my own means, and I hope that's okay, and I'm going to stop talking now and yeah, bye.